Welcome back to the show, everybody. Check out these headlines. SEC versus Coinbase. Swift is in the news. We need honest ledgers, one says. We're going to hear about that. EU crypto regs could actually spell disaster. You're going to need to know about it. Elizabeth Warren and her crypto bill. You're actually going to like that news, believe it or not. Ex-general counsel for CFTC on top cryptos or commodities. Oh, the plot thickens. We got that and so much more, including XLS-30. How about this? Automated market makers. You can be one too. Somebody roll that beautiful intro.
Digital Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. You can follow us on Twitter and YouTube for exclusive content. And before we get started today, I have to give a very, very special hello to Angela in South Africa. Her and her dad watch my videos together, and he sent me the cutest video of Angela saying, "Come on in." And it just tickled me to death. Angela, I hope you're having a wonderful day in South Africa with your dad, and I hope you guys are able to hang in there and this crypto space moons for you, and it's nothing but a great time for everybody down there, and everybody makes lots of money, and you can get lots of candy. You know what I mean? Because what kid doesn't like candy? So have a great day, Angela, and shout out to Dad. So we'll talk soon. All right, now let's talk about this. It's the market, ladies and gentlemen. $1.24 trillion market cap for crypto. It's sitting flat at the moment. Right now, 29,000, a little slightly over for Bitcoin, 1885 for Ethereum. Tether market cap is 81.3 billion plus. XRP is 46 cents, up 2% on the 24-hour, but we're still off on the 7-day. Glint, ladies and gentlemen, points out, and if you haven't checked it out here, listen, Jason Cousins is going to be at XRP Las Vegas, and you can get a web ticket. They're going to be an incredible lineup, I'm telling you, of everybody participating on that Saturday conference. Get your web ticket, the link underneath of this video, or go to XRP-Las Vegas and get your ticket. Jason Cousins, CEO, will be on stage, and he says here, U.S. debt is almost $32 trillion. It's gone past its legal ceiling. Only some Treasury tricks are staving off a default. Congress has to agree to raise the ceiling. Even if it can agree a compromise, a fresh ceiling just kicks the can down the road. This is so spot on right here. And I tell you, Glint is a great way for you to get gold, and you can buy, save, send, and spend it however you want to do it, and have a MasterCard debit card. You don't need the banking system. It's direct. I tell you, it's pretty remarkable, and it's insured by Lloyd's of London. So make sure you click the link underneath the video and check that out. Things are uncertain right now, and I love having Glint in my pocket. Crypto price warning, ladies and gentlemen. Now, we've heard this before, but this time it's Texas Senator Ted Cruz, the outspoken Bitcoiner, and saying that warning that China, Biden, and the Fed could be about to destroy all value of Bitcoin. Well, listen, I have said, and I know DAI has said this as well, I think we're both in alignment on this one here. Watch out for it, right? I mean, Bitcoin, I tell you, you don't know. I hope everyone makes $1 gazillion. But because it's proof of work, the energy consumption, what we see around the world, I've always believed that the largest whales of Bitcoin could, in fact, be the largest governments that control the price of this market that way. I can't prove that. It's obviously speculation, but it is something I'm always concerned about. And as the market moves into compliance, as the market moves into a regulatory framework, which it, believe it or not, it is starting to do so. We just need to make sure that it gets the clarity it needs so the innovation can truly work. And speaking of innovation truly work, there's nobody better to hear from than Caitlin Long here. She says it very simply. This is what we need. Listen.
Finance don't understand that the ledger systems that our traditional financial system run on, both in the banking system and in the securities system, are not honest ledgers. And this is a really simple concept. All we really want is an honest ledger, because if we have an honest ledger, then the fruits of our labor can be saved in a way that someone else is not stealing it.
And that's about the way to say it there. Now, we may disagree in some instances about which ledgers and value protocols serve people best. That's a whole nother conversation. But you know what? I have lots of respect for Caitlin Long and her advocacy for this space. No question about it. Here we see the recent opinion here of bank closures can open the door for stable coins. Well, of course they can. Of course they can. They can move money around. And speaking about what Caitlin Long mentioned and the value protocols and networks being honest ledgers, yes. But public ledgers, I think we know better than that, right? In fact, here's Swift right here to tell you about what they believe is coming for Swift and Swift payments. Take a listen to this, and shout out to Rokitu for this.
Messages as a component to our network is not something that will continue to be the primary mean of communication going forward, right? We do think that APIs or other type of communications will probably replace messages at some point, and we wanted to move beyond messages. And then the last part is that this strategy needed to be future-proofed. So it is a 2-year strategy, but whatever we develop under the context of this strategy needs to be relevant, needs to be updated, and needs to be future-proofed, right? Whether it's for new asset classes, whether it's to connect to all of these networks that Mark from Symbiont was explaining, how can Swift help into that journey? It's something that was key. Messages as a component to our network.
And it really is where we're going here. And notice Swift says in the next 2 years, things will be different. So, look, in my mind, you're talking about the APIs, you're talking about stable coins, CBDCs. We know that there is an agenda with most large economies to have a CBDC out here working in the world by 2025. We know that ISO 20022 is also the new messaging standard, which has been around for more than a decade. We all know. I had the developers up my ass, you know what I mean? But the reality is all of these things can work to complement one another, right? That's the beautiful thing. And the world is moving to that place. There's no question about it. So, look, how long it'll take to get it? Will it be just the 2 years? I don't know. What does the market look like when we get there in 2 years? I don't know that either. But I'm here to find out. And I tell you this, as I look at this right now, take a look at this from the EU Commission. Scott Chamberlain tells us when it comes to the recent EU's proposed regulation that they will be a disaster if the definitions are not adjusted to match. Now, everybody was up in arms, and I was too, excited that we saw such a large jurisdiction come to an agreement about what the regulations would be. But listen very quickly to what he says here that we need to pay attention to. The overall intent is that crypto intermediaries should be regulated, and people launching crypto projects should publish complying white papers, known as WP is his initials here as he gives it, and act honestly in good faith before selling tokens to the public or listing on exchanges. Lovely intent, but not what the text says. So this is where it gets funny. Check this out. And this reminds me so much, by the way, very quickly, of the U.S. infrastructure bill where they couldn't even get the definition of broker-dealer right. This is the scary part about government. An issuer of crypto must meet certain obligations, be legal entity, publish a complying white paper, and behave in good faith. Okay, but an issuer is anyone who offers a token to the public or applies to the list on an exchange. To list it on exchange. An offer to the public means to sell to a third party for fiat or crypto. So an issuer is any legal person who sells a token to anyone else. Nuts. How are we all going to write white papers just to send tokens to each other? The cumulative effect is that anybody who sells a crypto must publish a complying white paper. What that meant is the issuer makes an initial offer to the public, but MiCA makes no effort to distinguish between primary and secondary sales. It captures all sales and sellers. Worse, MiCA stuffs up exchanges. It clearly intended to prohibit exchanges from listing tokens that had no white paper unless they were exempt from needing a white paper. But what they wrote was exactly the opposite. No exchange can list a token that has a white paper unless it never needed one. So the language that he's drilling down on here, you can see, needs some correction here. And I am excited to also hear from, Patrick Hansen as well, who follows the EU regulations as well. So it seems like we've got much the same issue over there with legislation as we did here. right? Hope for the best, right? Coinbase versus SEC. Will their legal battle clarity on regulation for other provide clarity for other crypto companies? Well, you know what? Take a look at this mess. Shout out to Fred Rispoli for this. He says, wait, what? Look at this. This is from Coinbase, December 7th, 2020, ladies and gentlemen. It says here, we note for your disclosure that, and it goes on to say, please revise the risk factor to clarify that Bitcoin and Ether are the only digital assets as to whether to which senior officials at the SEC have publicly expressed such a view. And now they're in trouble over the issue. Well, listen, this brings on a lot of problems here. Jeremy Hogan says this really well here, too, based on Paul Grewal's chief legal officer of Coinbase thread that he had. And you guys know they're being sued. We don't need to get back into it. But what Jeremy points out is just really relevant here. It says there's just no way to reconcile allowing Coinbase to sell shares of a stock to the public and then turn around 2 years later and say the sales are all unlawful. That is not investor protection. It's regulatory rug pull. I tell you what, you can't say it any better. And then this argument here from Bill Morgan. Shout out to Bill. He lays this down. Seriously, if Coinbase is going to run this argument in a defense to claim that by the SEC and mean it that its decision to delist and ongoing decision to not relist XRP is an entirely inconsistent and inconvenient fact. Let me just rephrase the submission to reinforce the point here. So just to catch everybody up here, Coinbase has basically said that we have not listed any securities and we won't list any securities. All our tokens are fine. So the conundrum here is that they did at one time list XRP. So how are you going to make the argument by referencing that you don't list securities when in fact you did list XRP, which is claimed to be a security at this point? It just complicates the argument, and basically Bill is pointing out here that don't think for a second that the SEC is not going to use this to their advantage as much as they possibly can. And don't think that this person right here wouldn't use it to her advantage. It's Senator Elizabeth Warren. And luckily for us, I told you you'd like this news, she's having trouble introducing her crypto bill and getting sponsors. Well, let's hope that that continues, because you know that she is not a fan of cryptocurrency. And that is just, you cannot overstate that. However, in one of yesterday's hearings, Dan Davis, ex-general counsel at the CFTC, he looked up all the top 15 digital assets, and you're going to love what he says here. Take a listen.
If a digital asset activity occurs on the spot market, it's not a security, it's not a leveraged retail commodity product, then there is no CFTC or SEC regulatory authority over that product. There is only CFTC enforcement jurisdiction. How large is that universe? It is large, and I base that on two key assumptions. First, I looked at the top 15 digital assets by market capitalization. Now, there are thousands of digital assets, but the top 15 account for about 86% of the market. Second, I looked to what the commissions themselves have said about those 15 digital assets. Not a chairman, not a commissioner, but the commission itself, because only the commission can speak for itself. Based on my review and looking at CFTC and SEC enforcement actions, it appears that the CFTC has asserted that 7 of the top 15 digital assets are commodities. These 7 digital assets are some of the largest, accounting for approximately 76% of the digital asset market. The SEC, as a commission, has never challenged any of those CFTC determinations, some of which have been around for years. Instead, the SEC, in an enforcement action, has asserted that only 1 of the top 15 digital assets is a security, and that digital asset currently accounts for about 2% of the market. 76 to 2. 76% a commodity, 2% a security, and the rest of the top 15, about 8% undetermined. I don't think that should be very surprising, because the market division between swaps, regulated by the CFTC, and securities-based swaps, regulated by the SEC, is about 90% swaps for the CFTC and 10% security-based swaps for the SEC. So I conclude where I began. There is a significant regulatory gap in federal spot market regulation of digital assets because the large majority of digital asset spot market activity falls outside the regulatory jurisdiction of the CFTC and the SEC. Thank you. If a digital
And let's hope that Judge Torres gives us a ruling before they figure out how to close that gap, because it just worries the daylights out of me where they're going to end up here on their own. I mean, whether we're talking about the EU and the MiCA regs, or whether we're talking about right here and just getting something right like the spot market for crypto or the definition of broker-dealer, I don't have a lot of confidence in them, so I'm hanging in there for Judge Torres. We need you. And we could use you a lot sooner rather than later. Listen, that's going to do it for me. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe, leave a comment below, and I'll catch all of you on the next one.